Today, I want to talk about conspiracy theories, not to mock, not to shame, but to understand something very human. Because conspiracy thinking doesn't begin with stupidity, it begins with uncertainty, it begins with betrayal, it begins with the very normal need to make sense of chaos. And our brains are not wired to tolerate chaos very well. It's the reason why we watch crime shows, because we want to potentially think up a reasonable solution to a mystery, because our brain wants things wrapped in a nice, neat bow. Heck, I'm the first to admit that I like series like Disappeared and Unsolved Mysteries and things like that. But I'm also the first to admit that I don't like the mystery as much. I mean, I like the mystery, but then I don't like the mystery. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like conflicted, right? Your brain would rather have a frightening explanation than no explanation at all. It's why all these years later, the JFK assassination haunts us. Because we want to know who was responsible, how it all went down, and all of those things, right? It's almost like a mind game we play with ourselves. The brain hates uncertainty. Humans are pattern detectors, right? Even when we think or are told that there is no pattern, some of us can find a pattern, right? It may require a little bit of wiggling here and wiggling there, but we are sure that we have found a pattern. How many of you are like that? You try to find patterns. It all started in elementary school for a lot of us, right? We look for cause and intent. We think the cause is XYZ, and the intent, we're not 100% sure on the intent. But you know what? Give us a little bit more time and we can probably figure something out. I mean, that's why all the rise of the web sleuths come in. You know what I mean? People love a mystery. They would love to solve a mystery. There's those games on the shelf of like Target, which are like the unsolved crimes. I got that one Christmas. Unfortunately, I have yet to solve that crime. So, other things kind of took my attention away. Ambiguity feels unsafe to our nervous system. What do you mean there's no solution? What do you mean it's still a mystery? Uncertainty is literally frustrating for a lot of people. The thing that always made me feel satisfied, though, and I know some of you may laugh at me about this, but I'd love to watch old unsolved mysteries, especially when Amazon had all the old unsolved mysteries, because they would actually update them. Like if they had been solved years later, they would update them. And that gave me so much resolution and so much peace. Let me know in the comments if you're one of those people that likes the resolution and the peace, because I sure do. Trauma intensifies the need for certainty. Because with trauma, and those of you who've experienced trauma know this, you don't like the uncertainty. You don't like the unknown. You want to be sure that you are in a safe, secure situation, which is why hypervigilance happens, where you feel like if you're hypervigilant, you can protect yourself and keep yourself safe. And that is assurance for you and reassurance for you. It's why those of you who are trauma survivors very likely like to sit where you can have a full view of the room and your back is very safe to a wall so you can scan for any sign of danger. It's a coping mechanism, right? It's something that you learn to do, not because you wanted to be that type of person, but because you had to be. Your nervous system required it for you. Randomness feels unbearable. A villain feels manageable. Why conspiracies feel empowering. This is the part people don't talk about. Conspiracies, especially when you have other people who also believe this conspiracy or this explanation or this theory, let's even just call it a theory. I'll be honest, I mean, there's certain things that make sense to me. Just as I'm sure there are certain things that make sense to you that might not make sense to other people, and that's okay, right? All of our brains work differently. God made us different for a reason. Conspiracies give insider identity. You all may remember the conspiracy around Q, who Q was and who Q was going to be. I actually watched that documentary. Very fascinating documentary, actually. It also builds community. People who have the same goal, the same belief system, and can actually get along and interact together, it does build a community. And it also offers the ability to somewhat feel like there's something certain in the world, certainty. And our brains love certainty. I know I do, right? A lot of us do. You know, it's just human nature. Also, a lot of people feel that it gives them moral clarity, right? They feel like they know what their lane is, what they believe, and they have a group of other people who agree with them. They share that bond. They also have a clear enemy, right? So for instance, let's say that, you were a big JFK enthusiast and you're really interested in his assassination. I personally found the Kennedys very fascinating. And I've always wanted to know more about the assassination and who did it and why and all these things, which, the Warren Report kind of failed us in some ways. I know a lot of you probably feel that as well, especially if you're a Kennedy buff. But ultimately, it's like things were so redacted. And there were so many things about that just didn't make a lot of sense. And then RFK Jr., of course, is also RFK, his brother, that was actually a very sad thing too. But this community creates, I see what others don't. And yes, not everybody is going to see everything, and that's okay. And some people have a very analytical mind. They're able to see patterns. They're able to extrapolate from certain things that they see. And that may be their opinion. That may be their theory. That may be how they see it. But that emotional high is not the same thing as evidence. Unfortunately, I would love to be able to wrap everything in a nice, neat bow. And I wish that I could, especially certain things that have happened in history. Skepticism versus paranoia. Skepticism asks for evidence. Paranoia assumes hidden control without falsifiable proof. So skepticism. If you are a skeptic, you are looking for proof. You're looking for evidence, concrete evidence. You're not looking for conjecture. You're not looking for opinion. You're looking for facts. I forget what show it was, but it was like, just the facts, ma'am. Nothing but the facts. So skepticism, you can actually convince someone or encourage someone to go your way when you provide updates with new data. And then that person is going to say, okay, well, I didn't think you had facts, but clearly you're updating with new data. It also allows room for complexity, because not everything is going to be simplistic. There are going to be things that are going to be complex. Some people will understand those things. Some people won't. That's okay. We all have different areas of expertise. We all have areas where we know certain things, but we don't know other things. And also skepticism tolerates, I don't know. And ultimately, that is the safest bet, to be like, you know what? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I would have to research it. I have to look more into it. I'd have to talk to some other people who know a little bit more about this than I do. And that's fair. Versus paranoia moves goalposts, right? Paranoia says, okay, well, the answer is X. And then somebody else says, well, actually, no, it is not X. It is actually that this cannot exist under this particular system for this reason. And then all of a sudden, somebody else says, well, that's actually not true. It's actually, So ultimately, it's almost like they're kind of playing the game of, moving the goalposts on you. Every time, like you're trying to figure something out, they want to move it. Well, this isn't really how it works. It actually works like this. And so then you don't really have anything measurable, anything that you can kind of build a community on and you can actually all agree on, which is a big thing of people who are interested in the same thing and feel that this is a compelling theory that they believe and they want to follow. And it also interprets disagreement as confirmation. That's paranoia. And it expands to explain everything. So let's talk about trauma and distrust. If you've been lied to, dismissed, or gaslit by authority, your nervous system will generalize that distrust. And ultimately, that makes a lot of sense because you think about when we're growing up, right? We're dependent upon our caregivers, be it our grandparents, be it our parents, be it our aunts, our uncles, people around us who are older than us, who are supposed to take care of us. Sometimes even our educational leaders, right? Our pastors, our people of faith that we trust and we believe. Our older siblings, for instance, too, who actually may have more knowledge than we have. If while growing up, we experience things where people are moving the goalpost, lying to us intentionally, just to kind of gaslight us almost, or to manipulate us in some way. When we ask questions, we're dismissed. We're told that we just need to, just forget about it and not ask those questions because those are tough questions that our caregiver or whoever does not want to answer. Or being, gaslit, manipulated, having people use projection against you. Did anyone ever tell you that you ask too many questions, that you need to just sit down and be quiet? Children are made to be seen and not heard. I mean, things like that. Think about how distrustful. If you've experienced that, I'm extremely sorry that as a child, it's almost like your curiosity and your zest for life and your quest for trying to find things out in a normal way, as children do, was snuffed out, and you were left with mistrust and disillusionment, probably because you didn't understand why people wouldn't just answer your questions, which is completely fair for you to feel that way. Pain explains distrust. It does not automatically validate every explanation that follows. Let's talk about what real critical thinking looks like. Critical thinking means seeking primary sources. So primary sources could include like an encyclopedia, or let's say, for instance, that you are into computers or doing stuff like, doing auto mechanic items. You would go into the periodicals that are dealing with the things that you want to know most about. You're not necessarily going to go into Google and look at them as a primary source. They're more of a general source. And also considering probability. Certain things are probable, certain things are possible, and just kind of looking into all of that. And additionally, accepting uncertainty, because nothing is 100%, right? Nothing. Even though we wish it were, and it would be easier if it were. And also being willing to say, I might be wrong. I feel like XYZ, but I could be wrong. Grounded thinking isn't flashy. It's steady. And steady wins. So if you value calm, evidence-based conversations rooted in psychology and lived experience, you're in the right place. And I will say we have a fantastic community in this group. I'm thankful for each of every one of you and your contributions and you listening and engaging. That means a lot to me. It really does. And how you are compassionate with your fellow posters, which I think is fantastic. Um, thank you, and please keep it up. And thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Hopefully you'll tune in again to Recovering Perfectionist Mama, Grace in Progress. Have a great night. Bye-bye.